So good evening, everyone. My name is Roger Anderson. I'm the Director of Wellness for the Westboro Public Schools. We're very pleased tonight to bring to you a program from the Square One Group. The Square One Group is a partnership between the Westboro Public Schools, Westboro Youth and Family Services, the Westboro Rotary Club, and Westboro Connects. We've presented different programs from substance use to this one being called, in their own words, Stories of Hope and Perseverance. We are joined by the Westboro Youth and Family Services Director, Kara Presley, who will be our moderator this evening. And we also have 3 young adults who are graduates of Westboro High School. I'll introduce them now. We have Connor Schoen, who is the graduate of the year 2017. Rebecca Arena graduated in 2018, and Krithi Krishna graduated in 2019. All 3 of these alumni of Westboro High School have some amazing stories to share with you, really about being human and being part of our community. We do have 3 goals for this evening's presentation. Our first goal is to destigmatize the conversation about mental health. Our second goal is to share stories of hope and perseverance. And our final goal is to empower students to access resources, because in the town of Westboro and in the Westboro Public Schools, we have tremendous resources available. And we want to make sure that both students and families and community members all understand that they have access to support. And so with that, I'm going to hand the presentation over to our moderator, Ms. Kara Presley.
Thank you so much, Roger. I'm really excited to be here. I've had the pleasure of getting to know our panelists a little bit before this event. And so I know really confidently that you're going to appreciate and enjoy their stories and learn a lot from them this evening. So our plan is to have each of our panelists give a presentation, tell a little bit of a story about their own experiences, and then we are going to share some questions and answers and share with you some resources. So let's dive right in. I'm going to have each of them introduce a little bit more about themselves before they tell their stories. And I'm going to start with Connor Schoen.
Hi, everyone. It's so great to be here. My name is Connor Schoen, and like Mr. Anderson said, I'm class of 2017 for Westboro High School. Feels like a decade ago already, but only 4 years ago. I am currently the co-founder and executive director of a nonprofit called Break Time. We're a Boston-based nonprofit working to end young adult homelessness. I started Break Time in 2018 when I was a student at Harvard after graduating from Westboro. And our goal is really to empower young adults experiencing homelessness, many of whom are experiencing challenges with mental health, to build sustainability in their lives while building resilience in their communities. So we work to recruit young people from other organizations, provide 2 weeks of training, and then place them for 3 to 6 months of purposeful transitional employment, learning to see their own power and potential through purposeful work in the community. So for me, what I do now at Break Time and sort of everything that has made me who I am today and defines my mental health today came through my experiences of coming up through the Westboro system and really learning to grapple with my mental health, primarily when I was a junior and senior in high school. When I was in high school, I knew that I was facing challenges. I didn't know what to call them at the time. I didn't have the words or the diagnosis to explain what these anxieties, what these challenges really were. I now refer to my mental illness as a mixture of anxiety and depression, but those words meant nothing to me. Depression was just a synonym for sadness that was maybe a little bit more severe, and anxiety just meant craziness. I didn't really understand what those clinical terms meant, and it made it hard for me as someone who's kind of more quantitative and likes labels for things to be able to understand really and name what I was experiencing. Moreover, after I graduated from Westboro High School, I actually came out in 2018, and it was a very challenging experience for me. I did it inspired by actually the young adults I worked with at a shelter called Y2Y, because 40% of young adults experiencing homelessness actually identify as LGBTQ+. And these amazing young people, these resilient young people, are homeless actually because they've been kicked out of their homes because of the way they identify. This is a crisis that is happening all across the world. And it is not, and that includes Boston, that includes Westboro, that includes everywhere. And so working with so many incredible young people who, despite everything, were so proud and authentic about their identities really inspired me to embrace my own identity. But I couldn't really do that until I had the language. Again, that's just sort of, I think, part of who I am and what I prefer. But I didn't even know what the term bisexual meant, pansexual. I didn't know outside of gay and lesbian what other terms existed to describe members of the LGBTQ plus community. So learning those terms when I was a freshman in high school at Harvard and exposed to a lot more folks in the queer community was really transformational for me. So I think overall, what I learned from that whole experience is that if we start having conversations earlier on about mental illness, about sexuality, about gender identity, for a lot of young people, that will allow them to sort of classify experiences they're having and better understand exactly what they need. For me, I just didn't have those words at my disposal. I think another thing that was really powerful for me was when I was a senior in high school, I ran on the track team, and one of the assistant track coaches, Ms. Camille Glenn, who works at the school, pulled me aside to do performance-based coaching. So I was originally told that it was basically like a sports psychology experiment, which, if you knew me at the time, was a great way to get me to start therapy. I didn't know it was therapy. I didn't even call it therapy at the time. But Ms. Camille Glenn sort of stealthily, along with Mr. Anderson and Coach Newt, kind of stealthily got me to start really opening up and sharing my experiences. And we didn't talk about sports at all. Ms. Camille Glenn and I sort of spent 6 months really building a deep relationship and understanding of things that I didn't talk to anyone about. And that was life-changing for me. I still, to this day, am involved in therapy, and it's been really impactful and important. I'd also say when I got to college, one of the things that I didn't know about in high school that I wish I knew more about was different medications that can help to address depression, anxiety, and other mental illnesses. I started experimenting with my psychiatrist with different medications that I could take when I was a freshman in college. And I think up until that point, I just had no knowledge of what was out there. And there was such a stigma that was like only for people who have this like severe limiting mental illness. But what I really learned is that certain medications can help to take the edge off and empower you to take control of your mental health and be more effective in using the practices that you learn through therapy and through sort of counseling and other things you engage in. So I would say those three things overall were really important to me. One was knowing the terms to use to name what I was feeling. It's something I didn't get through high school, and that's why I think it's really important that Westboro High School and other high schools across the United States really engage in those conversations, and they start at home. So I definitely encourage people to use those terms and not make them feel like this taboo, stigmatized thing, both for sexuality and mental illness. Secondly, therapy was really important for me, having someone to talk to about what I was experiencing. And thirdly, I think really the experience of knowing, of going through sort of what I call experimentation phase with medicine and understanding that it's okay to need that sort of help. And it's just a biochemical support system. That was really empowering for me. And I wish that I was able to sort of incorporate that earlier on. Overall, I think if I have one message to share with folks who are experiencing mental illness right now, I would say that it's really important that when you feel like you can't, do something for yourself, if you feel like you can't take a break just because you deserve that break, or you feel like, this is something I struggle with a lot. I felt like, I don't deserve to take a day off to feel better. I have to keep doing this. One of the things that helped me is don't think about doing it for yourself if that's not working. Think about it doing it for other people. Like ultimately, me really managing my mental health has enabled me to start an organization to support other young adults in their journeys and building sustainability in their lives and escaping homelessness. I would not be able to do that if it weren't for the amazing people who've supported me at Westboro High School and also at Harvard. And I think it's important to recognize that if you're feeling like you don't feel like you deserve the support, or you don't feel like you deserve that time for yourself, just remember that you doing those things and investing in yourself is having a positive impact in the lives of others as well. So that's been really important to me. I really appreciate you giving me the time to share more about my experience. And I'm really excited that this is a conversation that we're having now in the Westboro community. So thank you so much again for having me tonight, and really looking forward to answering more questions later in the program.
Thank you so much, Connor. And we will have time for questions. And in fact, if viewers at home would like to ask questions, the best way to do that is to submit them now via email or while we are presenting to Roger. And I'm going to let Roger share with you his email address.
Yes, so if people send in real time any email to me, we'll feed those questions into the group. And my email is Anderson, R, Anderson, and then the letter R at westboroK12.org.
Thanks, Roger. All right, I want to now introduce to you Krithi Krishna.
Hi, I'm Kriti, and I graduated with the class of 2019, and I'm currently a sophomore at the University of Rochester studying environmental health. So I don't really consider this to be a story of hope, and neither do I want anyone to think I'm an expert in mental health in any way, but what I can do for everyone here is to share my experience. A lot of my struggles with mental health, especially in high school, stemmed from my own confusion with my identity. I knew I felt uncomfortable in my own skin, and I beat myself down every time I was reminded of that. At that moment in my life, though, I didn't know if the version of myself that I was projecting outwards was the truth, because I didn't even know the truth myself. And I feel like a lot of people, when they're that age, can understand that they are expected to follow some sort of path or conform to a certain standard. And the kids, like the high school kids now, will know what I'm talking about when I say conform to a certain standard. In high school, I wasn't able to comprehend what loving someone who isn't biologically male meant for me. In all honesty, I thought same-sex attraction was a part of teenage development that everyone around me was going through, and they just didn't speak about it. And I want to be frank with you all. I believe that the environment this school nurtured created an unwelcoming place for me and many others. And I really hope that there are high school students currently that resonate with me and can actually speak up about any harassment that they have faced in high school, because I do know that there are other people with the same stories that can speak towards some sort of bias or unwelcoming atmosphere that they have felt in Westboro High School. So I really loved what Connor was talking about with the normalization of talking about issues related to sexuality. I would have appreciated in health class if I was given a less heteronormative perspective of like sexuality, of sex, health, and sex. I would really appreciate it if I had been given some sort of talk related to that, because that would have helped me normalize what I was feeling inside. So every time I felt like I could be transparent with certain friends or family members, certain homophobic comments from their mouths would immediately shut me down. The people around me who I felt wouldn't accept me kind of took on a certain spot in my own mind, and I manifested them and it kind of clashed. My thoughts kind of clashed in my own head. I now know that is called internalized homophobia, but at first I thought that the internalized homophobic side of myself was the correct side. And so there was this opposition in my head. And the pandemic definitely amplified these thoughts. Suddenly I was internally screaming at myself because there was this huge spotlight on my sexuality. And I descended into this sort of emptiness because I knew that I couldn't be transparent with the ones around me because I didn't feel safe yet. And when you're alone with your thoughts like that, it can take you to a dark place because you're constantly berating yourself for not conforming to the idea of your future life that you predicted and pictured in freshman year of high school. And that's obviously changed for so many of us. I had to learn that I was extremely impressionable at that age, and I still am, but the one difference is that I now have a certain awareness that the people I surround myself with can be crucial to my state of mind. And I know that You can always change the people you surround yourself with. That's not something that stays fixed. So you don't have to feel trapped by those that you surround yourself with. A part of my journey, I guess, was learning not to be so judgmental towards myself, and again, surrounding myself with people who wouldn't coerce me to have those judgmental thoughts. It was sort of like a who cares moment. Like, yeah, there's certain people who are my friends and family that claim they will support and love me unconditionally. But what I've learned is that love has many forms, pun intended there. Love has many forms. And when you do love someone, you love and care for every single part of them, no matter how ugly it may seem to you. So in order to truly accept and love myself, I had to learn to embrace this one part of me that I had rejected for years. And it is an ugly journey, but it has a beautiful ending, is all I really wanted to say with this. And for anyone that's struggling right now, I encourage you to reach out to me. And you have my full support if you don't have anyone else's support. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you so much for giving me a platform to speak on this.
We really appreciate it, Krithi. Thank you for sharing your truth. And based on Krithi's invitation for students to reach out to her, if you do have the desire to do that, you can get Krithi's contact information from me or Roger. So please feel free to contact us after this show. And Becky, we'd love to hear from you now.
Thank you. Amazing stories, you guys. So I am Becky Arena. I graduated in the class of 2018 from Westboro High School. I am currently a junior at Wentworth Institute of Technology. I'm studying interior design and project management. So the story that I want to share with you guys today, I'm just wanted to share the realness of what mental illness can look like and what it can do. I think that's a really big part of destigmatizing and just making this language more normalized, because it is something that a lot of people deal with. So again, I want to thank you all personally for hearing our stories today. It means a lot to me. It's my goal that I will play a part in helping someone somewhere, somehow, no matter how small that impact may be. I've learned that sometimes I can hear something countless times and not comprehend it. And then someone says it to me in a different way, and suddenly it registers with me. I hope I can be that someone for at least one person today. And if that doesn't happen to you tonight, that's okay too. You just have to keep having the conversation until you understand whatever you're battling or how to battle it effectively. So the most impactful example of this realization happening to me occurred about a year ago. I was a patient in a mental institute treating anxiety, depression, severe suicidal thoughts, self-harm, and substance abuse. This program helped me find the right combination of medications, a great therapist, and gave me the strength to feel okay on my own in the real world. I learned a lot from the time I spent in this program, including tips to help stop a panic attack, how to speak openly about how I'm doing, and how to advocate for myself, among other things. But the biggest lesson I learned was from a single conversation that I had. Twice a day, I had to check in with one of the staff so they could assure that I was safe. We could also talk freely about anything we wanted to, since it was one of the only times throughout the day that we had some sort of privacy. This day, I was talking with a nice young man named Ben. I'll never forget his name. Ben is one of those people that are wicked easy to talk to, so easy that you sometimes share things that surprise even yourself. This day in particular, I shared with him that I was constantly struggling with feeling weak. This is one of my struggles that I still battle with to this day, but less so than I did then. I let myself get to the darkest point in my life, one that I didn't think I was going to return from. I was suicidal, severely underweight, abusing substances, skipping almost every meal, self-harming, and just completely hating myself. I got so low that I felt close to death, either by actively ending my life or just letting myself wither away. I found myself in this situation because I was too embarrassed to ask for help. I didn't want the people in my life thinking I was weak or lesser than them because I needed help. I hated taking medication because I knew there were plenty of other people in the world who were okay enough to not have to take it. I was constantly hating that I felt weaker than other people because I wasn't okay. I had a friend who at the time was suffering from depression, and she sought no medical treatment for it. I told Ben that I was weak because I needed medication, a therapist, and a hospital to be okay, and she was fine without all of that. Ben's response to me was something along the lines of, I understand how you're feeling, and I'm sorry for that, but let me explain to you why I don't think you're weak. Let's take diabetes, for example. People who have diabetes need medication and treatment for their illness. If they don't take their medication, they could become very ill or even die. That's just a fact. So, and on top of that, we as a society don't believe that them taking their medication makes them weak at all. In fact, if they didn't take their medication, we'd think they're pretty stupid. So why would someone decide not to treat their illness? That just doesn't make sense. Ben told me, you have an illness. Taking medication and seeking help doesn't make you weak. If anything, it makes you that much stronger because it takes bravery to admit you need help, especially if you're afraid of appearing weak. And this was my moment of realization. I'd heard the narrative of asking for help isn't a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength, countless times before, but for whatever reason, Ben just said it right that day. Now, when I was asked to prepare a story for this presentation, I was asked to share stories of hope, and I told them I wasn't going to do that, and here's why. I thought back to when I was 16 years old, as I'm sure some of you are, and I thought about what I'd want to hear then. Stories of hope is probably the last thing on my list. In my experience, it doesn't do much good telling someone who's struggling with mental illness to be hopeful, as hopelessness can be a severe symptom of said illnesses, as is the case for me. Instead, I'm going to share a message of perseverance. In doing so, it's my desire that I will be able to empower whoever is listening in their own battle with mental illness. So this is an analogy that I use to help explain my illnesses to people who don't know what it's like to suffer from mental illness. I suffer from anxiety and depression. Imagine yourself in a boxing ring and someone who looks a lot like yourself, only much stronger and meaner, is staring back at you. They are ruthless and they don't fight by the rules. You get knocked down a lot and it's really, really hard to fight your way back onto your feet. But the second you throw in the towel and give up, the second you decide not to get back up, it all fades away and they've just defeated you. Every day I wake up and I decide to fight. I have to decide that no matter how strong they get or how many times they knock me down, I will always find a way to get back up. I need to never stop fighting. This, coupled with Ben's story, is why I believe I'm strong. I go about my day doing things like showering, eating, class, or driving, things that most people do on a daily basis without even blinking an eye. And here I am, living out the actions of my life. And on the inside, I'm constantly fighting this battle. How amazing is it that I'm able to do all of these things that others can't, all while fighting this terrible battle within myself? And sure, some days are harder than others. Some days the fight seems completely overwhelming and unattainable. But as long as you wake up and choose to fight, you're strong and you will be okay. Because someday you'll be able to look back and say, wow, this fight used to be a lot harder than it is for me today. Take me, for example. I was at the point of no return, but because I decided to show up and fight every day, I'm the person that I am today. I'm a student, a daughter, a friend, a partner, and so much more. All because I didn't give up and I didn't let my illnesses take that away from me. Thank you again for taking the time to listen to us today. I hope that we're able to make an impact on your lives and empower you to keep fighting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Becky. I can say, personally that I already feel like you've made an impact on my lives. And I'm a therapist and I hear people's stories every day, but I never cease to be in awe of the strength and courage that it takes to tell the depths of your truth, both about your identity, about your experiences, about your mental health struggles. And I really commend each of you for coming forward and setting an example and really being a model and helping young people who are watching today to know that there are options out there. There's possibilities for me. And I just want to, as we kind of shift into our question and answer section, I want to just acknowledge that we have been in a worldwide pandemic for over a year now. A year ago, we knew we were going to be sitting at home for a few weeks and it would hopefully pass. And here we are a year later, still nowhere near normal. Luckily, there's some hopefulness on the horizon with vaccines and springtime and warm weather, and there are things to look forward to, but I also know that we're still right in it. And we know that there is a mental health crisis growing in the midst of this pandemic. This is especially true for young people. Young adults are particularly vulnerable to negative mental health impacts as a result of the pandemic. And we know that for minors, emergency rooms have seen a 30% increase in psychiatric visits for children. So this is real. Krithi and Becky and Connor are not alone. We know that there are people watching today and people who may not know about this that are experiencing these things today. And so we are so grateful that we are putting this conversation out in the open. We are not ashamed to speak of it. And we are very much looking forward to getting people connected to help and to inspiring some sense of, if not hopefulness, at least some sense of there may be something more if I keep on going. So I really just want to say that and appreciate that. And so the question I want to begin with for each of you, and I am going to ask each one of you to answer this first question, is what during this pandemic have you struggled with emotionally? Like, what about the pandemic has been emotionally trying for you? And I know, Krithi, you touched on this a bit in your story. Would you like to expand on that at all? We'll start with you.
Yeah, so again, I think it was being alone with your thoughts, really having the time to reflect, because the more you think about your life, actually, the worse everything seems to become. So I think really having that time to reflect and realizing that during all the go of your regular life, that there are some underlying issues that you need to work through. That definitely took a toll on me emotionally. And kept me from doing anything productive for a long time. So I think that's what I mainly struggled with.
Thank you. Becky, how about you?
So I know everyone had their own struggles with the pandemic, and mine was, so the day I got out of the hospital, the next day I got an email from my school saying we all had to move out and everything was going virtual. So I had this really weird sense of, like, one day I'm feeling super excited about starting my new life and in the new world back out there. I'm gonna grab it by the horns and just go for it. And then the pandemic happened. So I've had this kind of sense of I haven't really been able to reach my full extent of what I want to do or who I want to be because of the limitations from the pandemic. And it's just been a little frustrating, but you just have to. I've been just trying to stay positive and make the best of it that I can.
Connor, how about for you?
Yeah, well, first of all, let me just say thank you to Becky and to Krithi. Becky, your vulnerability and honesty is anything but weak. That was one of the most amazing and inspiring stories I've ever heard shared, and especially not just in like a one-on-one conversation, but in front of so many people. Your ability to do that is incredibly admirable. And Krithi, likewise, I am just blown away and inspired by you and your strength in sharing this. Sexuality and my identity was something that I've never felt comfortable talking about until recently. And the way in which you opened up a conversation and invited others in, invited students to have that conversation with you is incredibly inspiring. So thank you. For me personally, the pandemic has definitely, I think, enabled me to fall back on bad habits, just because you're sort of like physically always in the same space. And you, whether those habits, for me, I would say it's really isolating myself from others. I think I shut myself off from others because I am an extrovert and others bring me joy. And I almost punish myself when I'm feeling particularly down by just cutting myself off. And it's really, really easy to do that in the pandemic, because unless you're hopping on your computer, you aren't seeing anyone. So I think that sense of isolation and being able to so easily enforce it on yourself has been a challenging thing for me to deal with. And I think I've really gotten through it just by like calling it out as much as I can and reminding myself that it's not my gut telling me that I want to like totally separate myself from the world. it's a force that I'm fighting that I need to actively be fighting against, even if the world isn't a pandemic. So thank you to both my panelists, and I hope that's helpful.
It's incredibly helpful. Thank you. Another question that has come to our attention is there anything else other than what you've shared so far that you think it would have been important for your parents or the trusted adults in your life to have known then? Please feel free to chime in, any one of you.
Sure, I'll hop in here. So I'm lucky enough to have an incredible mother who loves me and supports me. And she, throughout high school, she was, I'm going to use the word pressuring, but in a nice way, pressuring me to seek medication and seek therapy because she could tell I was struggling, even if I didn't want to admit it. And it took me a while to finally agree, but I did. And she was also the person I called and asked to drive me to the emergency room when I needed to go to the hospital. I asked her to go to dinner with me, and then I got in the car and said, we're actually going to the hospital. But the reason that I knew I could call her in that moment was because she gave me this, and she still does, this just endless support. And so my message to parents and adults is to just do your best. I mean, I'm not a parent, so I can't really speak, but just do your best to be there for your children, be there and support them no matter what, and take what they have at face value and trust them. And just be that pillar of support for them that they may need. There may be no one else in the world that they can talk to, so if you can be that person for them, that is just priceless.
Krithi or Connor, would you like to answer that? Krithi?
Yeah, that was very well said. I think what parents and other adults can do is, I wish the adults in my life knew how embarrassed I felt about having these issues, and how ashamed I felt and how uncomfortable I felt in my own skin. I kind of wish the adults in my life knew that and worked to create a more welcoming environment for me to even begin to tell the truth. I think that's where I was lacking some support. But I guess for parents wondering how to support their kids now, or for teachers wondering how to support their students, I think the best you can do is keep an open environment and never close off any idea, because being like judgmental can lead to people feeling like they can't open up to you, and you want people to feel like they can open up to you because you're the adults in their lives. So I think that's really where you want to be. You want to be open to hearing and listening to anyone else's struggles, and you need to create like a judgment-free zone, basically. But I think I was lacking that definitely in school and at home. So.
And I would just add that it's important to remember that in as much as you can, resist feeling like, oh, this is my fault. What did I do wrong as a parent? I think there's a lot that comes from a really great place of love. And I, as someone who has never been a parent, I understand that I can't truly empathize with that feeling. But know that when you lead with that, it can make your child feel like you're adding, make your child feel like they're adding stress or burden to your life. So I think focusing the conversation on how can I support you, and not sort of having a counterproductive conversation about the past. Like, what was the trauma that I instilled in you when you were 4 years old? Like, what's your darkest, deepest first memory? Like, those conversations are not going to prompt recovery for either of you. It's just going to create stress and anxiety. So I think being proactive and talking about, okay, what can we address now? How can I support you? What do you need from me? Versus saying, oh, this is all my fault, I'm so sorry. I think, at least for me, I don't want to speak on behalf of others, but for me, those conversations are a lot more productive than the ones where we play a blame game, because those end in fighting and like no progress. So personally, that's something that was important to me in my dialogue with parents.
I'm going to jump in and I'm going to agree with Connor. I'm going to agree with what you said. I found that I would be worried about speaking up about how I was doing because I didn't want my parents to worry. I didn't want them to be upset. And so I ended up withholding a lot of information from them, which ended up not helping me at all. So again, just saying what Connor just spoke about, just please do your best to make that a safe environment that they can speak to you and make it as proactive as possible.
And let me give a supportive message to the parents and trusted adults out there to say, it is okay if you're freaking out in your head about the information your children are sharing with you. It's okay for you to be scared, for you to be nervous, for you to be worried. It would be normal for you to have those thoughts of what could I have done differently? So you're normal for having those thoughts. I love the advice that folks are sharing to not share that with your child when they're sharing with you their struggles. And please know that there are lots of supports out there for you. And I hope that you are talking to each other as parents to get support, because this is something that should be destigmatized for parents as well. All right, I want to share with you a question from the audience, and this one I'm going to direct specifically at Krithi. What should a friend do if they see a friend struggling and they're not sure what to do? Krithi, what are your thoughts about that?
I guess struggling in general. I think what you can do as a friend is, again, create some sort of space where you can say to your friend, hey, you can tell me anything, kind of thing. Like absolutely no judgment. You can tell me anything. But do your best not to force it out of them, because that actually might not put them in a safe space at all. That might make them feel like they're being pressured to reveal this information that they're not ready to reveal yet, Maybe they're struggling with anxiety. Maybe they're having troubles with their sexuality, with their identity. Maybe they're having issues with all that, and they don't want to be in. They are embarrassed basically to reach out and receive help. So I think what you can do is just show that you are a person who's completely open to talking about subjects such as mental health, mental illness. Subjects that need trigger warnings, as I like to say. Like you need to just give a complete openness to speaking about issues like that, because then people will be willing to open up to you. And if you are willing, share your own experience with mental health with your friend, because that can sometimes, if you share your own experience with someone else, they are now prompted to tell you about their life, because they can probably relate to you. You can probably have similar experiences as well. So yeah, I'm sorry if that wasn't clear. Anyone else can jump in and answer that too.
Thank you, Krithi. I'll jump in with one question. I'd like to just sort of highlight through a couple questions some of the resources that are available, particularly in the schools. And I know, Becky, you had an experience with the Center for Student Success at Westboro High School, which is a transitional program for students who need to be out of school for a little while or a long while and have them transition back to school. So can you just share a little bit about your experience with that and how that resource was there for you?
Yeah, of course. I think that CSS, the Center for Student Success at Westboro High School, is such an incredible program that I think should be a standard at all schools in the country. So I first entered CSS. Coach Mr. Anderson was actually the one who recommended that I go into it. I had just had a concussion, my third concussion, and I was out of school for an extended period of time. And I was still experiencing symptoms. And I felt this terrible pressure that I was falling behind in school and I wasn't ever going to be able to catch up. And wasn't doing homework. It was not a great place to be in, especially involuntarily. So I ended up joining CSS, and what they were able to do for me was liaison with my teachers, kind of just updating and being like, hey, no, she wants to do the work, but she can't. And sometimes having an adult and a peer of your teachers advocate for you in that way, it can be completely game changing. So I was in there for a while because of my concussion. And once I was back to my full schedule and back on top of my academics, I ended up staying in there and continuing my therapy with Miss Glenn. And this actually prompted me to then find my own therapist. I had known that I should probably get one for a while. I ended up finding my first psychiatrist. And I think that this program, it gave me a space that I could go to if I wasn't feeling okay. Like throughout the day at school, if I just needed a minute to process, or if I was going to have a panic attack or something like that, I knew that there was a safe room in the corner of the school that not many people know about. I could go there and I know I'd be okay. And I think that among all of the different things that they offer to the students, I think that's probably the most important one, is just having that safe space within the school that you can escape to if you need to. But it was a great program that helped me get back into school academically and mentally. So yeah, CSS was definitely a great experience for me.
That's great, Becky, and I'll follow that up with another question, and I'll try to be a little vulnerable as a member of the Westboro High School faculty, and ask either Connor or Krithi, if you had the opportunity to look at the structures or the climate or the culture of Westboro High School, what might you suggest that we work on to improve the opportunities for all of our students to feel safe and accepted, regardless of how they present or how they, what's going on in their life? And we're always looking for improvement on that. So I'd be curious to hear from you what thoughts you might have that you could share with us.
I guess I'll start just with some ideas off the top of my head. I think for me, my personal experience, one of the biggest game-changing moments that I had was when I was approached about what, at the time was called like sports psychology, but was really therapy. And I needed to be sort of coaxed in that way to take that step that I knew was the right step for me. I wasn't being forced into anything. I didn't feel like I was being corralled. I had meetings in the past where I did feel like I was being sort of cornered by a guidance counselor. I have this one image of this one room in the school by the principal's office that has no windows. I think it's orange. That's how I remember it in my nightmares. And I was being asked about suicidal ideations and certain comments that I had made to another student. And that experience felt too aggressive. I felt like I was being corralled, whereas being sort of coaxed lightly was better for me. But regardless, I think it's important that we introduce all the resources to students so they know and can sort of choose their own path. I was not personally familiar with, I actually just learned about CSS in this conversation. I wasn't familiar with the structure of Ms. Camille Glenn's office and the resources that were there. They might have been introduced in one presentation at one time or another, and I might have missed it. But I think repeated reminders in an open conversation with everyone that those resources are accessible to everyone. And it's not just the room where the weird or the messed up kids go, which is how I was feeling about myself at the time. I think that's really important to sort of destigmatize it within our own conversations as a school and say this is a really cool resource if you're feeling a certain way. And even if you bring in alumni or students to say this is how I benefited from it, I think that, especially students who you think will sort of have an influence on others, I think that is a really effective way to just say, empower people to feel like they have the control over sort of how they seek help. Because I didn't necessarily feel like I had that control because there was sort of an asymmetrical information challenge. So yeah, I don't know if that clarifies things, but I hope that's helpful.
That was great.
Super helpful.
I have to agree with Connor on that because I had a similar experience too, where I felt like I was being pressured into telling and to explaining my mental health, my mental illness problems. But and I also do remember feeling very ashamed every time I went to that part of the school, like as if I was like waiting there to talk to like a guidance counselor or something. I just remember being like, oh, I don't want anyone to see me, and just like trying to hide my face. So I think we need to like rebrand that as not a place where like the messed up kids go or whatever that is. I think we need to like figure out some sort of way to make that a more a happier place, I guess. For as ironic as that sounds, like I think we need to figure out a way to make sure that certain students can go to certain teachers and the teachers can refer them there. There needs to be some sort of system in place so it's much easier to, and I think that's probably already changing since I've been in high school. So there definitely is more of a system now, as you were explaining, and more resources. And the fact that we're even having this conversation means there's more normalization. So I really appreciate this talk.
So I think I'm going to shift us to talking about some of these resources. And then before the end of our time together tonight, we're going to come back to you to close out the evening, panelists. But I do want to highlight some of these resources that are available to students, and not only to students, but to all members of the Westboro community. I would love to start, Roger, if you will, going over what resources are available to address mental health and emotional wellness within the schools.
So I really appreciate Connor and Krithi being honest and giving us some great feedback there. And as you mentioned, we've been working really hard at this for many years, and we continue to strive to do so. So, the Student Center for Student Success is a great place where students can come. And again, that's a transitional program for students to get back. Our school counselors, it's the pandemic has been really challenging for everyone. And we've seen it somewhat as an opportunity to shift some of our resources to really meeting our students where they are. A lot of what we call tier 2 interventions, where we really need specific support to students for very specific concerns individually. Our counselors have been training for that, and we're using our resources in our school counseling offices for that. We do have school psychologists on board, as well as other counselors, and our administration has been going through training as well in a variety of areas in efforts to be more inclusive, in efforts to be more accepting. And it has clearly been a mission of our administration to make Westboro High School the most accepting place that we possibly can. And so that work is always continuing very clearly. And this includes also, I think it's not just Westboro High School, it's all of the Westboro schools. And a lot of the things that a number of you mentioned begin to bubble up before students get to high school. And so it's important that we recognize that many of those same resources are available at Gibbons and Mill Pond and all the way down. And we continue to strive to improve that. So hopefully, Kara, that's a pretty good picture of what you were hoping for there. I know
Yes.
You have some resources that you would, be interested in sharing as well.
I do indeed, but I want to add to what you're saying about the climate and culture at the schools. I meet with Roger and another member of the school's administration who specializes in social and emotional health, and we meet regularly, several times a month, to talk about ways to continue the de-stigmatization and to build programming around these things, and not just to help kids who are already struggling with mental health issues, but to take a proactive approach to prevent mental health distress and to build coping skills. And I know that's happening across the curriculum, as Roger indicated, but I also know that we are trying other little ways of bringing this conversation forward, like events like this. Also, we have a almost monthly, but not quite monthly publication that we've started creating called the Community Wellness Guide that focuses specifically on issues of mental health and issues of anti-racism. And we are trying to bring those topics to the forefront of conversation and again, normalize them and make them a part of our regular interactions and our regular conversations. So there are some little ways that we're trying to impact community change. And that wellness guide is for the whole community as well. And thanks, Roger. I do want to introduce some of the resources that are not only available to Westboro students, but also to all Westboro residents. Services at our office, Westboro Youth and Family Services, are free to residents. We offer counseling, we offer clinical consultation, resource and referral services, and we are just a phone call away. We will help people get connected to the mental health services they need. If you're not even sure if you need mental health services and you're just looking to talk things through with somebody, our staff is available to do that. We have 3 of us are licensed counselors. I'm a social worker. My colleagues are licensed mental health counselors, and we're happy to talk to anyone at any time. We've also launched a free anonymous online screening tool that is available to adults and parents. You can go on to the website that's here on the slide, and you can take any number of mental health screenings, get the screening results, which won't be a formal diagnosis, but will be some indicator of what might be going on for you. And you will be directed to resources that will hopefully benefit you. Again, trying to just make these things more accessible to folks. We also have a contract with Williams James College and their Interface referral service. Interface provides free matching services to Westboro residents who are seeking outpatient mental health services or behavioral health services, including substance use treatment. And all Westboro residents need to do is call this number, say, I'm from Westboro, and you will talk with a trained counselor who will take your information, hear about your insurance, learn about what kind of services you're looking for, what kind of match you're looking for in a provider, and connect you to those services for free. Also through our office at Youth and Family Services, we have recently been awarded a grant through the Metro West Health Foundation to build emotional resiliency in our community in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic. And through that, we have created a program called Reach Out Westboro. And in partnership with Westboro Connects, Youth and Family Services is putting on small group trainings that are targeted to folks who are most at risk of mental health distress during the pandemic. We mentioned, for example, that young adults are one of those groups. We will very soon be making a date, probably within the next month, for a training for young adults. This training is free. It'll be virtual, 1.5 hours to 2 hours for anyone ages 18 to 26 who live in Westboro. No, you don't, it's not a support group, it's a training. People do not need to have a history of mental health issues in order to be there, just an interest. And it will focus on recognizing signs and symptoms of mental health distress, learning some basic coping skills, and supporting folks to learn how to access help. And it's really designed for people to learn not only about their own experiences and to feel better empowered to manage their own needs, but also to recognize needs that their friends, family members, coworkers, and peers have to be able to support them. For more information about Reach Out Westboro, if you're interested in participating in a training or you just want to find out more, please call our office at 508-366-3090 or go to the Westboro Connects website. And finally, if you can show the next slide, Roger, there are a lot of services outside of Westboro too. Oh, that it looks like that slide didn't make it to the cut. So maybe we'll come back with that, but there is a crisis line, call to talk, that you can call or text. There is that's a 24/7 crisis line. There is the Trevor Project also has a 24-hour hotline and text line that is designed to particularly support LGBTQ+ folks, young people, young youth and young adults who are struggling with emotional distress or mental health issues. And there is a also parenting resource. There are several hotlines. We'll try to get those up for you by the end of the presentation tonight, so you can see those as well. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you want to email Roger with questions about services, either at Westboro Youth and Family Services or on a wider basis as well.
That's awesome.
I wanna,
all right. Thank you.
Yes,
sorry.
Sure. No, it's okay. I want to turn the attention back to our panelists and ask you each to one by one kind of share your final thoughts. Like, if you want, what do you want young people watching this tonight to take home? What's your take home message? Let's start with Connor.
Great. Well, first of all, those resources are absolutely incredible. And I encourage parents, teachers, students, whoever is watching to access them. Looking at that, like, I'm like, wow, that's something that I wish I had in college. That's something I wish I had now. Both getting connected to like the right outpatient services and being able to get free counseling services is pretty unique. And I would say that a lot of communities do not have that. I'm in Boston, and Boston definitely does not have that at scale. So definitely take advantage of that. It is amazing. Secondly, I would just say to anyone watching, I know it's easy to sometimes feel like the situation you're going through alone and in isolation, especially during the pandemic. As I was talking about, I definitely feel that way, and sometimes force myself to feel that way by cutting myself off from others. If there's anything that you sort of take away from tonight, I would encourage you to think more about the fact that there are so many of us out here working through different challenges, working through our mental health, and there's so many people to talk to and to be in community with. And whether you're an introvert, an extrovert, an ambivert, whatever, it's just nice to know that there are people around you that are going through what you're going through and can be there as a resource, even if their experiences are different. I think in high school, I sort of forced myself to think that my experiences were sort of uncommon and unknown, and things that I couldn't even name. So I think it's important to just remember that there are people out there that understand what's going on, that are open and happy to talk to you about it, and that really do want to support you. The job of teachers isn't just to educate us, it's really to support us as human beings. I think it took me till my senior year to realize that. And just know that whether you're a parent, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a student, it's okay to struggle. It's all our process of helping one another to actually help ourselves and to embrace the process that we need to go through to feel better. So thank you so much again for having us, and really excited that these sorts of conversations are becoming more open in the Westboro community.
Thank you. Krithi.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything he said, but I also want to talk about how I want to thank everyone that put this together, because I think this really helped me reflect on what I went through in high school and what I continue to go through. And I really hope it resonated with at least one student. And I'm so glad that we as a community are learning from the past in a certain way and making changes in favor of progress, because it truly shows that we are a community that's ready to change. And I hope that we continue to be, and we continue to support students. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you. And Becky.
Yes, thank you all so much. Thank you for inviting us here tonight. Thank you to the panelists for sharing your stories. They were so inspiring. And I'm glad we're having this conversation and making it just more normal, and hopefully people can continue to have this conversation. I think that for my take-home message, I am talking to the students, and I want to say that if you are not doing okay, that's okay. And what you need to do is just find someone that you can talk to. And if you don't, and no one comes to mind like a friend or a family member, sometimes those closest to you, you don't feel comfortable speaking with, go to your primary care physician and ask for a mental health screening. And they will be able to help you find doctors within your insurance and everything, and really help you along that process. And if your parents, you can't drive there yourself, and if they don't know and you don't want to tell them, just say you need a physical for school or something. I know lying isn't great, but find a way. And if that doesn't work, couldn't work, their crisis hotline is 741-741. It's 24 hours. You can call or even text if you don't want to call. So I recommend that. And then if it's serious enough that these aren't options, 911 is always an option too. And asking for help is okay. And it's not a bad thing. It's the right thing to do. And if you've been struggling with feeling like you need help, find a way to ask for it. I promise it's worth it. It'll be tough, but it'll be worth it. And I would also like to extend out the invitation. If you want to get in touch with me, I'd be happy to talk with you. Reach out to Mr. Anderson or Kara. I'm just really glad we're having this conversation. So thank you all again for having us here tonight.
Thank you so much to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Close out the meeting. Thanks to everyone
Yeah.
for being here. Have a great night.